Well, the value of Women's History Month, like African American History Month or Native American History Month, for historians and for students and for the wider public, is that it's a time to consciously foreground the experiences and accomplishments of women in the face of what has been a traditional bias towards men's experience and stories. Now that's changed over time somewhat, but why that is so valuable is not just to take the time to do that during the 1 month, but I think the goal is always to take that notion with us, to have a mindfulness about centering women's experience in the ways that we talk about history in the past in all the other months of the year.
I will be honest, I didn't know that Women's History Month was even a thing, which is telling to why it's important that we showcase a month on women history.
I think I've seen it referred to in the media more times this year than I have in a number of years past. And so, I think it's one of the things that I associate with it now is it's something that's long overdue and glad to see it getting more attention.
I guess it's a time for women to really be acknowledged in whatever industry they're in, a time for them to be really recognized for the things that they are obviously very passionate for, whether it's other females in their career, in their industry, or whether just women trying to pursue things that they particularly are passionate for.
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate to work with a few faculty members here at Texas State that were also my faculty members. Dr. Marian Hauser, she's a professor here. She's the person who taught me how to teach. So I learned how to teach from her and what it means to be a communication professor. All came from her. Jen Gotti and was my first boss at the Today Show. And, she so much of what she taught me is still what I use today.
The director of Lower Division Studies, Dr. Nancy Wilson, has been somebody that I've been able to go to and has mentored me over the past number of years. And so she's been a really important person in my life. As well, I work a lot with the university seminar program and getting a chance to see Dr. Camber Bolch come in, take over that program and help it grow has been really, really interesting to watch too.
Elizabeth Engelhardt really was the one who instructed me to pay attention to and always listen to students. In many of the ways that I conduct myself in the classroom still to this day, every day there is something that I have Elizabeth Engelhardt's voice in my head.
Her name is Karen Scrivener, and she's probably by far one of the most recognized persons in our field, and being a female faculty, I think that makes her even more recognized, and she is very passionate about what she does. She's very passionate about including female and researchers in her group.
Women like that changing these perspectives on scholarship have very much shaped how I do my work every day.
Yeah, I would think progress has been made. There are schools that are now open to women that weren't before, and programs that were exclusively male that aren't exclusive anymore, but they're still a little too exclusive in some fields.
With television, it's a little more apparent just because I've noticed right away that when we'd be interviewing or working with other people or, especially in logistics, which I worked at in television, we had to interact with a lot of outside companies, outside organizations, a lot of outsiders. Even though my boss was the boss, in these meetings, they talked to me and not her when she was in charge. And so that was something that was very noticeable. And as someone who studies communication, you notice those things.
Especially, if a woman applies for a job, they're trying to figure out if you're a breeder. They're trying to figure out if you want to have kids or you're going to have a family. Are you really serious about your job? Because if you have a family, you might not be as committed as anybody else. So, and to tell you the truth, it's not just men who think there'll be a lot of women.
It's better now, but it used to be that photography was sort of thought of as a kind of technical medium, sort of gear intensive or something like that. And then so women weren't sort of considered in some ways as being as technical as men, which is baloney. I think the most interesting books and photography books and exhibitions are coming from women.
Women's voices are often sort of talked over, that there are especially, older male professors who still hold on to that notion of a gendered authority. And then in a more material way on college campuses like this, one of the things that we see all the time is that teaching evaluations used to make decisions on personnel and retention and tenure, that studies have shown that in those teaching evaluations, the one that students write at the end of the year, that there are very different kinds of words and subjects broached when the professor being evaluated is a man or a woman. And again, this has to do with sort of traditional notions of authority, and oftentimes male college students will remark upon the appearance or demeanor of a woman professor in a way that they will not for a man, and give them lower marks. And to the extent that that's used to make decisions on who's teaching in the classroom, that's a real bias that still stands out.
I guess specifically in our industry, construction and just in general, has progressed incredibly. It's been pretty amazing to see the amount of females that continue to grow. Particularly in our department, we now have a construction and women engineering group organization known as KWIC, and so the females in that group are very passionate, very strong, are very much recognized, I think, in the last few years.
That gender division of labor hasn't been erased, but academia and especially the liberal arts look a lot different.
More women are graduating with college degrees than men. So I think we are on the brink of the tide turning, where it will be the women who are mostly educated in this country who will be making more and more decisions. Will that be tomorrow? Probably not. I still think there are a lot of barriers in place right now that are systemic, but I think we're starting to make ground. And I think every time we see a Me Too story, or a woman speaks up about harassment, or we see more and more women running for president, all of those things are indicators that we're making progress. Those are not indicators that we have succeeded.
There's been huge strides across the board. Are we where we're supposed to be? No. I think most museums are way underrepresented in terms of women. We have way more women that are graduating from our MFA programs and our undergraduate programs that are represented in galleries and museums across the nation, but also worldwide. So there's a lot of work yet to be done.
I think it's something that shouldn't just be celebrated in 1 month, and that it's something that we should talk more openly about. And I think, when we limit it to 1 month celebration, and that does bring attention to it, and that's wonderful. But I think having these conversations and what's going to happen this month, and the way that, different organizations are focusing on Women's Month, it will provide an opportunity for us to, address certain issues that are still problematic in terms of women employment and women in pay, and a lot of different inequalities that still exist today. The thing is, women need to help other women, and that is what she always says. So that's what I always try to tell my students. If you're a woman and you have a job and you're in a field, right? How do you open a pathway for other women, and how can you be a mentor? How can you be a supporter of other women? And I think when women champion women, that's how we make progress.
Be your own boss. Just keep going.
Keep doing what you're doing. I think that every woman that goes through and is successful leaves a trail of light for the next group of women to come through, and then they leave an even brighter trail and an even brighter trail.
You got to be prepared to face some injustice, and I think you got to find, build yourself a network, find allies.
Find members of the community that you can that can be allies, and then also make strong sort of partnerships with other women, men as well, to basically create an environment that you can create a kind of opposition to, a sort of resistance to any kind of lingering patriarchy.
So I would also say that you would need to speak to the men in those male-dominated fields to make them aware of the importance of, noting their own biases and privilege, of understanding how these spaces work and how patriarchy has sort of shaped these institutions.
It's brave to go into fields that have historically and traditionally been dominated by men. I think knowing that, somebody acknowledging that can mean a lot.